place, Jeffrey Blydenberg and Marty Sullivan for seat 1. And in seat 2, we have Carl Priestman and Sheila DeCiccio. We are delighted to have you all here with us this morning, and I want to thank the candidates for their time and preparation. So our moderator this morning is my dear friend, Raleigh Lee Steinhauer. He's the president of the Steinhauer Group and currently serves as the Government and Legal Affairs Director for the Greater Orlando Builders Association, the Government and Legal Affairs Council for the Apartment Association of Greater Orlando. Lee obtained his bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Delaware and his Juris Doctorate from Seton Hall University School of Law. Lee is licensed to practice law in New York, New Jersey, and Florida. In addition to his professional work, Lee is active in several business and community-related organizations in Central Florida and is current chair here of our Government Affairs Committee. Lee lives in Winter Garden with his wife Allison, son Alexander, and most importantly for the Winter Park Chamber enthusiasts, a Sheltie named Peyton. Please join me in welcoming Lee Steinhauer.
Thank you, Betsy, for that introduction. It's always an honor and a privilege to be able to participate in this, what I see a great public service to Winter Park. So I know you're not here to see me, you're here to see the candidates. So without further ado, I'd like to have the candidates for seat 2 and seat 1 come on up to the stage. We have Ms. DeCiccio, Mr. Blydenberg. Come on up. Oh, sorry, Mr. Priestman, Mr. Sullivan, and Mr. Blydenberg. Thank you. You got to keep the 4 of them straight. So just to go over how this is going to work in terms of the rules, we try to keep it as simple as possible. Everyone's going to have an opening statement and they're going to have a closing statement. The opening statement is 60 seconds for each candidate. Closing statement is also 60 seconds for each candidate. And the way we're going to do it in terms of orders, we're going to have a coin toss. And since we have 2 seats, we're going to have 2 different coin tosses. We'll have our first one with seat 2, and whoever wins the coin toss has a choice of whether to be the first to give their opening statement or the first to do their closing statement. So if Ms. DeCiccio wins and she wants to go opening statement first, then Mr. Priestman would be the second opening statement, but he would be first in the closing, and Ms. DeCiccio would be second. So it would reverse. Pretty simple. And then in terms of the questions themselves, each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. And we will do it starting here and go back and then reverse, so everybody has the opportunity to answer all the questions and have equal time. So without further ado, trying to see, we do have a coin, so that's good. We'll start with Ms. DeCiccio. We'll have you be heads, Mr. Priestman, tails. Okay. Tails.
I'll go first in the opening.
First in the opening. Okay. So, Mr. Sullivan, heads. Mr. Blydenberg, tails. Okay. Tails.
First in opening.
First in opening. Okay. So, we will start with seat 2. Mr. Priestman.
Ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Carl Priestman. Thank you to the Chamber. Thank you to Advent Health. My wife works at the Winter Park Hospital, which will always be Winter Park Hospital to my wife. She's there working right now. Thank you so much for hosting us. John Adams and Theodore Roosevelt are my favorite presidents. They're the ones that I love the most. I teach history at Valencia College. John Adams often spoke about how he had such a zeal for his country. It's a thing that just kind of drove his perspective. And Teddy Roosevelt, when he ran, he was at a time when most of our, we would say, talent was focused on being in business. But he decided he wanted to be involved in politics, and his friends thought he was crazy because politics was kind of dirty and messy and vitriolic, and something like we might think today of. Most of my friends, when I said I wanted to run, they're like, really? And so my wife and I have lived here since 1993-94. We love this city. We've fallen in love with it. We want to share our lives. Our life has been a life of service in a variety of ways. Most of my work has been in nonprofit for 30 years. And I think that gives me a unique perspective to bring to the chamber. And I love it.
Thank you. And just to clarify, we have the best in the business here, Shirley, who is keeping time, and she is a stapler, so she says, when she says you're done, that's it. So, Ms. DeCiccio, your opening.
Thank you everyone for coming and everyone for watching live. Is my microphone working? Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm a 37-year resident of the city of Winter Park. Both of my children were born and raised here. I'm an attorney. I was a first woman partner at Lowndes Strawson, Dr. Keener & Reed. I've represented numerous all types of business clients. I believe in mediation as opposed to litigation, and I know how to ask tough questions. I've served on numerous boards in the city of Winter Park, planning and zoning for 6 years, 5 years with code compliance as chairperson. I'm currently on the Economic Advisory Development Board, and I was on the Orange Avenue overlay. I've been a small business owner in Winter Park. We owned our law firm for 20 years. I was a member of this Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a member of St. Margaret Mary, Winter Park Rotary, Winter Park Land Trust, and many others. I'm running because Winter Park is facing several difficult issues. First and foremost, infrastructure. That's our traffic, our parking, and our drainage. And also development. We need more development, but it has to be done right. It has to be done to maintain the charm of Winter Park.
And that's
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, your opening.
Thank you, Lee.
Oh, sorry about that, Jeffrey, you're first.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Winter Park Chamber, for holding this event. I'm running for City Commission because I love Winter Park, just like everybody in this room loves this community. I've been here, my wife and I moved here in 1997, and as many of you have seen on our ad, we moved here because of the scenic boat tour. Once you do the scenic boat tour, it's hard to leave. My professional background, I'm an architect. I've been in practice since for 43 years, retired last year. Had a little time in my hands. Somebody came along and said, you know, you really should be a commissioner. I said, well, I'm not sure. But with a little convincing, I said, yes, I would like to do it. For some of the same reasons that Ms. DeCiccio mentioned, that we have some important issues to deal with in this community. I have the skills and the capability to deal with those issues. On a community level, I've been the president of our Winter Park Rotary Club, I've been the president and chairman of Mead Botanical Garden, and I was the vice chair of the Winter Park Vision Plan, which was done in 2016. So I have the background necessary to do the work.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you. Thanks to the Chamber for hosting this event, and Betsy Gardner-Eckert, thank you. And Lee, thank you for moderating this. I'm a fifth generation Floridian, and I'm a licensed professional engineer. My wife and I have lived here 38 years, and we raised our daughter here. I have a bachelor's degree in physics, and I have master's degrees in economics from Florida State and engineering from the University of Central Florida. As an environmental and geotechnical engineer, I have executed projects all across the state of Florida. I have extensive service on various boards with the city, which with my professional experience uniquely qualify me to be your next commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move to the questions. Again, these are going to be 90 seconds. You don't have to use all 90 seconds if you don't choose. We will start at this end with Ms. DeCiccio, work our way down, and then move back the other way for the next questions. Ms. DeCiccio, first question to you. It's relating to the Orange Ave Overlay District, hot topic, as we all know. What is your vision for Orange Ave between 1792 and Fairbanks Avenue?
Well, as I said, I was honored to have been selected to have been on the committee, so I can talk to you from that perspective. The three areas that we were tasked to look at were number one, where Lombardi's is. It's the property owned by Mary Dimitri. Number two, Roberts Point, which is a property owned by the city. and number 3, the Holler property, which is where the RVs are on the corner, they're not there anymore, on the corner of Fairbanks and Orange. And what that committee, a lot of good came out of that committee. We had robust discussions. There was decisions for green space, there was decisions for bike paths, but there was also some disagreements. Where the disagreement came in was on the Progress Point property, which is owned by the city. I was one of 2 dissenting votes. I wanted to see there, I think it's a jewel, it can be a jewel for Winter Park. I don't think the city should sell it. I think it can be like the farmer's market, the garden, the golf course, something for the residents. So what did come out of it was 1.5 acres will be parkland, and this was with the work of Steve Goldman and the Winter Park Trust. And then the rest of it, we still don't know what's going to happen with it. It could be a mini theater district with like Winter Park Playhouse, Enzian. It could be like an East End market with vegetable gardens for the children. Whatever, it will be less density on that portion because Orange Avenue is the most dangerous street in the city. More accidents occur there than anywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kreisman, same question, or response to the same question. I can read it again if you like, or?
No,
Okay.
I think the Orange Avenue Overlay Group did a very good job. I think it's very important for us to trust our citizens when they do this work. It's one of the things that I value the most is the idea that people matter. When we ask people to be responsible for doing the investigation of the work, we need to trust what they found. And the group that did the work did a very good job, and I think it provides us a wonderful opportunity. As I said, at the commission meeting, it may not be a perfect answer, but we shouldn't be contented or believe we look for perfect answers. We want to look for the next best answer. I think there's potential with the work that allows us to be narrow and specific in our focus to allow us to protect ourselves from density in certain spots and allow for development for small businesses to be able to work on their properties to improve what they're doing there. I think the potential there is to mitigate our traffic, actually not make it worse. It's already as full as it possibly could be for the number of cars. And I think there's an opportunity there for Progress Point. I personally would also want to see the city save that and not sell that. But at the same time, look at a way to develop that for parkland, to move us down to Meade. And I would be very supportive of making it a theater district. I think that's one of the things we do not have. If you can imagine, if we can move Morse Museum to that spot, an example of that, what an amazing central piece that could be there on Orange Avenue that would bring people to that region. I think it would be a wonderful place.
Thank you. And just I know we had a train go by. If a train goes by and it interrupts anyone's response, we will hold the time until it passes, just as a point of clarity. Mr. Sullivan, same question. Would you like me to reread it, or do you?
No, got it.
Okay, 90 seconds.
So Orange Avenue, Orange Avenue overlay. The process they went through brought together a variety of skilled, experienced people to come up with the Orange Avenue overlay, and the process was very good. It was an excellent start. The product, however, needs some corrections. The commission voted on it, sent it up to the state for review. It'll be coming back in the next few weeks or so for final vote or revisions if required. The addition of more green space is an excellent piece of it. The bike and pedestrian facilities, it's excellent. The entitlements that are granted in the overlay as it now stands are excessive. For example, the Holler RV lot, currently it is entitled to 72 residential units. With this overlay and the trading of residential units among his properties, it'll be 184 residential units. So it goes 2.5 times over the current entitlements. Along with that, of course, will be more traffic. Now, in the overlay considerations, traffic was excluded.
I think that was time. Mr. Rottenberg? 90 seconds.
The vision for the city of Winter Park as the city of arts and culture and meeting its traditional scale and charm. and most importantly, to do it on a collaborative basis. Orange Avenue overlay, in my mind, is a home run. The reason it is that it was our citizens that put that plan together. That first and foremost, it's the first time we've done that. Well, second time, the vision plan was first, and then the overlay came along to do it in the next step. Certainly, how it gets done, how it gets implemented, is the important part. That's part of the reason I'm running. As an architect, I bring the kinds of skills that are necessary to make a project like that go forward and figure out how to implement it. There are some great parts of that project. The amount of open space that will be in that project is significant. I think the commission did the right thing in terms of how they were looking at that project, and even though it was 12 hours long and 38 amendments later, it was a democratic process that worked. There's still some room for improvement in some places that need to happen. I definitely agree with Sheila and Carl on the theater district idea. It's fabulous. The Winter Park Playhouse needs a new home. They've got 120 seats. It'd be great if they could double their size. And Progress Point would be a spectacular location for that. So totally in agreement with the Orange Avenue overlay.
Thank you. So we'll move to the next question. Mr. Weinberg, you're going to start this time around. This question is related to corridor traffic. Pass-through commuters and I-4 ultimate runoff traffic are a problem. And there are those who are critical of the proposed overlay who fear that multi-use density would make matters worse. Others who are supportive of the overlay would say that the overlay would naturally employ traffic calming methods. Also that FDOT plans to transform the utility and aesthetics of 1792 and its intersections, and that once completed, I-4 drivers will leave as fast as they come. What is your view on the corridor traffic that you will bring to the commission should you be elected?
Well, the first thing I would do would be to bring the various agencies that have jurisdiction over those roads together. So there's state jurisdiction, there's federal jurisdiction, city, etc. to look at how we can address the issues of traffic going through the community. Remember that about 70% of the cars that are out there are going from one place to another and did not originate in Winter Park. We get to live with it because we're in the most popular part of Central Florida, so everybody comes here, drives through it, et cetera, et cetera. There are the solutions, there's technical solutions to it in terms of signaling, and there are infrastructure solutions to it in terms of right turn, left turn, those sorts of things. But I think that what we need to do is first develop it as a plan together, because some of the places we don't have jurisdiction. On 1792, we have to do what FDOT wants us to do, so we need to negotiate that. Same thing on Orange Avenue. We need to, and the part about Orange Avenue overlay, it will slightly reduce, but it's also not going to be, the major impact is still what's going through. I was reading the Metro, believe it or not, I was looking at our Metro plan the other day, just about this particular issue, and there are groups within Orange County and within Orlando that are dealing with the same issue. We've got to work together, because that's the source of where the traffic comes from. It's not just our problem, it's theirs as well, and that's how we're going to address the issue of growth and traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, do you want me to reread the question, or?
No, I'll go forward. And traffic as regarding Orange Avenue overlay, it of course goes beyond that around the entire city. My experience with traffic includes the City of Winter Park Bicycle and Pedestrian Board, now Transportation Board, and serving on the Metro Plan Board as chair of the Metro Plan Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. There are incremental improvements, such as adding turn lanes, having smart signaling, to make some small improvements. However, the biggest issue is taking a holistic view of our traffic. And to do that, we have in the works a traffic model, where it's not a traffic study. This is a calibrated dynamic model where in the traffic model we can model various kinds of one-way streets or roundabouts or whatever, and run the model and see what the effects are, not on the immediate traffic, but throughout the traffic study in the neighborhood. In addition to that, another is Sunrail. I believe we need to expand the service from a commuter rail to a transit rail. In 2021, we'll be paying for it in part, and we'll have skin in the game with what happens with Sunrail. It's a shame to have this huge capital investment without
Thank you, that is
totally exploiting it.
It's time, thank you. We will now move to Mr. Kreisman. Would you like me to repeat the question, or?
No, we're
You're
good.
good, okay.
So traffic is an issue. I live off of Lakemont, 32792 side of town, and I used to be able to pull out on Lakemont pretty simply and turn left, and now I go down to Whitehall to get the light, because I don't feel like it's the easiest place to get in and out of. But we're not Winter Garden. We don't live on the edge of the problem. We live in the center of the problem. So that raises some issues for us. I agree fully with Commissioner Seidel that we need to have a dynamic model, and that I wish we had done that sooner. I think that will help us as we make our decisions. There's technology that we can and should bring to the equation, such as making our lights kind of time together with DOT. But I think there's some deeper issues that we need to be willing to talk about, which is where my whole campaign has been on, and the idea that this comes back to how we consider our neighborliness. The whole idea of a turn signal is not really anything more than a communication device to tell somebody, this is where I'm going, I care about you, I want you to know that I'm going here. And part of the challenge is not that there's necessarily too much more traffic on Lakemont, just for my example, but that there is people driving that I might feel like drive in a way that maybe is only thinking of themselves. So that's hard to challenge, but it's something we do by starting with saying to ourselves, each one of us matters, and neighborliness is key. When we do that, then you look at opportunities like OAR to provide us a chance to mitigate traffic, to look for ways to deal with technology such as how Google directs people. Many people are driving on the road simply because Google told them to turn there. So we can work with technology, and our city staff can kind of help us begin that conversation that will help us have some opportunities.
Thank you. Mrs. Sissio, same question?
Thank you. Traffic is one of the most important issues facing the city of Winter Park today. If we don't get a handle on it, everyone's going to suffer. Businesses, residents, property values go down. I agree with, in order to go into the 21st century, and as I think Jeffrey and Marty said, we need to do modeling. What we've done is traffic studies for each individual development, but that may just look at that one section. It may impact negatively down the road. Modeling lets you look at the entire area, left, right, turn lanes, everything, and shows you what's going to make traffic flow. Got to start doing that, got to look at the big picture. Number two, I'm a proponent of Sunrail going directly to the airport. That will be a link for Winter Park businesses to and from the airport. On a personal level, I would much rather take the train and drive to the airport. Also, we do have to cooperate, and I believe Jeffrey and Marty both said this too, with the other municipalities. It's not just our traffic. The growth, we have 2,500 people coming into Central Florida every week, and they're living in all the apartments building around us. We have to have cooperation with the state and with the other municipalities to really work on this problem and get a handle on it. And finally, there's some very, very short-term things that we can do immediately. Left turn lane on Fairbanks and Orange, left turn lane on Fairbanks and Denning. Right now, traffic stacks up. One person has to take a left turn, 2, 3 light changes. We can implement that right now, and that would make life a lot easier for a lot of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will stay with Mr. Sissio for the next question. And this is related to stormwater filtration. How do you feel about incentivizing developers with additional entitlements, if they're willing, in return, to underwrite the cost of stormwater treatment and infiltration?
I believe we have to work on this issue. Our stormwater right now, and if we just take Lake Midget, the water that is coming down Orange Avenue is just, it's untreated. So they're getting everything from paper plates to paper cups. We have to work on this issue for all of us. And so yes, I think we do need to incentivize. We have to require our developers, whoever builds, whether you're going to build a house or whether you're a developer building a project, you cannot dump dirty water. You have to have filtration systems. So number one, I think it should be a requirement. Now, the question comes in, if they just work on their property, it doesn't do any good if all the things coming into their property are polluted and the things on the other side are polluted. So I think in order to get a large plan, and again, this goes almost back to your modeling, you don't just do it for traffic, we need to do it for our whole system. And so And that's why I think our infrastructure, when I opened, drainage is a huge problem, and we need to get a handle on it, especially coming down Orange Avenue. So, yes, I'm willing to look at some incentives for developers, because I think that helps us in the long run if we all have clean water, not overflowing with dirty, polluted water. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kreisman, do you want me to repeat the question, or? Okay, 90 seconds.
Working together as neighbors is a key aspect, and people who come and develop here are our neighbors. The idea of wondering how can they then contribute. So one of the things that I thought was a strength with OAO was the idea of saying to these developers, we need you to put some investment into the city. Clearly, we face some environmental issues. As I tell my students, when the water all goes away, the clean water, we're in trouble. When you look historically at where civilizations have developed, they developed obviously around a water source. When the numbers were low, water was not that much of an issue, or you didn't have to worry about it. We're at a spot now where it seems like every other week, Dinky Dock closes, the water over near the dog park closes. You have these issues where this is all coming back from a sense of our numbers, our population. So asking people who are building and developing to put focus on that and invest in that, I think is important. But working with them at the same time, I think is important. So that when you add the idea of asking to give them something, I think there's some limits to that, though. I mean, there's a place where we need to make sure we're being very careful about what is being given. You don't want to be, in a sense, kind of giving away the store. But you're looking long-term strategic. That's one of the key parts of how we should be thinking, not necessarily what's only good for the year 2020, but what's good for the year 2070. And some of that will ask us now to pay some costs we may not want to pay to be able to provide a society that's healthy for our grandchildren.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, same question.
Thank you, Lee. To incentivize property owners to treat their stormwater, the Water Management District already requires property owners to retain their stormwater on property. However, there are a lot of things we can do because we need to keep our waters clean and we need to minimize flooding in the city. The city has done pretty well keeping our lakes clean. I paddle the lakes often. I was on lakes yesterday morning at 7 o'clock. When I paddle up to Lake Minnehaha and Maitland, I see a difference in the water quality in that lake, and that it's cleaner in Winter Park. It could be even better, and we do need to make all of these incremental improvements to use exfiltration trenches like on the second fairway. We also need to make sure that our fertilizer ordinances are properly enforced to keep fertilizer from the lakes. That is a major lake pollutant. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Lidenberg?
So water quality is both a community issue as well as a regional issue. At Mead Botanical Garden, we have a little creek that runs there called Howell Creek. And all the water that is running north to the St. John's from Orlando goes through that creek. As I've walked around and met with voters and met with residents, several have talked about, you know, the lakes used to be just incredibly clear. When you read when Winter Park was founded, they were crystal clear. Obviously, as population grows, that changes. I think the first responsibility as us as individuals, as Carl was saying about, you know, that we treat our neighbors well, and that means treating our water well, making sure that we do the right things. As Marty has just said, you know, we have to do it in our yards. We need to do it not only community-wide, but regionally-wide. So we need to be talking to Orlando and saying, because all that water is going right, you know, through our lakes. So it's a whole combination of things to address our stormwater, both personal responsibility as well as community responsibility.
Thank you. And we will start with Mr. Bleidenberg for the next question. This is related to green space and the U.S. Postal Service. The Commission is considering the purchase of Winter Park's downtown post office to expand green space near Central Park at a price of $7.5 million. Although the U.S. Postal Service did not initiate the sale of this property, under what conditions should the city purchase this property? Would you like me to repeat that?
No, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought for a moment you.
Nothing like an easy question. It's a laudable, it's an absolutely laudable goal, and it's been out there for a long time, as far as how we can expand Central Park and have, increase the open space that we have in terms of the residents' use, etc. On the flip side, there's a lot of folks that really like to go to, my wife loves to go to the post office there because it's really easy. So one of the first issues is, where do we put it? Where do we move it to if we were going to proceed with that? And then the other part, obviously, is the cost. We can afford $7.5 million, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the post office is going to agree to. So I think the long-term goal of more open space absolutely is important, but we have to do it in something that our budget will permit.
Mr. Sullivan?
Well, I have to agree with my opponent. Expanding green space of Central Park is something that many years from now, generations will appreciate that. It has now come forward again, and we have that opportunity to purchase that park. The retail space, we are committed to keeping that in a convenient downtown area, but the distribution, the processing of the mail, which takes up so much of the property, will move outside of the city, which it should, rather than having a mail distribution center right in the middle of our central business district. So I don't have too much more to say except that we must negotiate hard with USPS and get a proper deal. I think we're on the right path. We have committed to do that. And I look forward to expanding our Central Park.
Thank you. Mr. Priestman, same question to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate Commissioner Cooper's focus on this and her willingness to kind of press this issue. When Chase and Chapman first laid out the city and they put this focus on protecting the parks and having a Central Park, they were obviously visionary. That same vision is what we need now to be able to be looking ahead, and I think we're all probably on the same agreement that that's the right move. And I think when I say, I want to be thinking in terms of what's best for 2070 as well as 2020, sometimes that's the right solution, is to say it may be worth even more than the 7.5 million. Maybe it's worth 10 million. And as we think in terms of what's best for our descendants, we might say that's the right way to go. But the first thing I would want to do is talk to my neighbors. I want to be asking the citizens, where would the money come from, and are they willing to make that commitment? I think it'd be a good idea. As has been stated, the post office is determined to keep a downtown focus, which I think all of us would want. I think that's kind of the desire of every citizen that I've spoke to. So kind of the balance between where would you want to keep the downtown? Is it worth $10 million to you? Should we expand? I think on the basis, I would be saying yes. Even if we might lose the negotiation piece and we pay more than we might think it would be worth retail, the investment long term, I think, would be overall beneficial.
Thank you. Mr. Ciccio?
Thank you. Well, I agree with what pretty much everybody said here. We definitely, anytime we have the opportunity to obtain more green space, we should do it. And the whole purpose for doing it is to prevent that area from being developed into a high-rise or whatever. So yes, we should go forward with it. Where the money is coming from, it's CRA money. And currently, there's approximately $27 million in the CRA. We only have so many years to spend it. If we don't spend it, we lose it. So I think this is one area where it would be well spent because we would be preserving this land for the future. So it won't be coming out of Winter Park's direct budget. And as far as the retail goes, I don't want to lose a retail from downtown Winter Park either. And there's some, when and if the city's able to purchase it, the retail would stay downtown. There's some different ideas floating around. It would be maybe in the back where City Hall is, build it there. But it will be downtown, so we're not going to lose the retail. It would be the distribution center that would be leaving the city. So yes, I am for the green space. Anytime we can get it, we go for it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with Mr. Ciccio for the next question, and this is related to blight. Are zoning and ordinance inconsistencies the reason Winter Park is seeing signs of blight along its major gateway corridors? 90 seconds to you, Ms. DeCiccio.
So the question is, why are we seeing?
Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Sure. So, our zoning and ordinance inconsistencies, the reason Winter Park is seeing signs of blight along its major gateway corridors.
Yes, I think it is, and that was the whole, one of the main reasons for the Orange Avenue overlay. Take Progress Point. Right now, Winter Park has not been a good neighbor. We own that land, it is blighted, there is no question about it. I mean, when we were on the committee, people would come in and say, we call it jokingly the haunted property. 3 homeless families are living on it. The buildings, they're dilapidated. The fire department used to use them to practice. They can't even do that anymore because they're falling down. It detracts from the whole neighborhood. And so that's why the overlay committee was instituted, to see if we could get some consistency and to improve these areas. So I really believe that not just for this area, but there's other areas that Winter Park has that are blighted, and perhaps the overlay is the best way because it brings consistency in the zoning and the ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kreisman, do you want me to repeat the question, or?
No, I got it.
You got it, okay.
Well, blight's an interesting issue. In one sense, I think, as you drive around Winter Park, I don't know that I would say that there is horrific blight. There are places that I might think are not as developed at the same level as other areas. So maybe blight is in the eye of some beholder. But I think one of the things that the overlay allowed for, and I think it could be useful in other places, is allowing the kind of narrow, specificity to different sections as opposed to an older kind of model of just one fell swoop coverage. By allowing that, it gives the small business owner as well as the large business owner an opportunity to perhaps develop their land in a way. I think sometimes what we think is blight is perhaps a landowner wanting to express their first, their property rights from constitutional to say, I want to be able to do the best thing I can do for my property, which as a non-property owner, I might go, well, I prefer you do something for the city. At the same time, there might be a sense where they have the right to use their property to get as much money out of that as they wish. We want them to do things that are communal, that are neighborly, that are focused on the best, which I appreciate where the overlay has gone, allowing for us to put pressure on property owners to say, we'll let you do some things, but we want you to do things for us. We want you to do things for the whole city. Last night I was volunteer teaching at the Westminster Towers, and we were talking about the Renaissance. And one of the key things about the Renaissance is the people who had excessive wealth and had done well by themselves through business and trade, just put so much back into their civic structure.
That is time, thank you. Mr. Sullivan, same question to you.
Thank you. Blight, I'm trying to think of exactly, some of the businesses along our major corridors are looking great. And something like an overlay, I believe, is an appropriate way to look at these properties. One thing that I consider blight is our link system and our bus stops. I see people sitting on transformers, sitting on the curbs, and even within the CRA district where we have the money to do it, we, in my opinion, should have bus stops with benches and covers and trash cans. But overall, I believe an overlay procedure, as we started with Orange Avenue, may be a good way to do that and actually improve our major corridors to be more attractive. Thank you.
Thank you, and Mr. Glattenberg, your response.
Yes, as the question was stated, are there parts in our code that are promoting or pushing blight forward? And I think actually, going to the Orange Avenue overlay, that was a piece that was in our comp plan that was said that we would look at an area for mixed use. And so it kind of did two things. It started to look at an area that needed redevelopment, because not all of it's blighted. I mean, clearly, if you've been to Winnie's, that's not blighted anymore. That's a great black bean deli. But on the other hand, Progress Point is, definitely, they've signed the contract to tear it down, so that's going to go away. And then we'll see what happens as we move forward with the Orange Avenue overlay, which there's a whole implementation plan to make that happen. most importantly, that process for the Orange Avenue overlay can be taken into other parts of the city, which is working within our building codes, working within our comp plan, to then working with the residents in those areas. The area that I'm thinking of right now is our industrial area, which is, there's lots of businesses over there that are running their companies and all. Some people would look at it and say, well, you know, it isn't up to the charm of Winter Park, but folks down there would say, yeah, but it's my business and I'm doing very well, thank you. And so we need to work together to come up with solutions for these various parts of the community that may not, as from a community standard, be quite as charming as we'd like them to be.
Thank you, and we will start with the next question with Mr. Blydenberg, and this is related to Sunrail. How do you view Sunrail's current and future usefulness and their transition to assume local management costs in 2021?
I think Sunrail is a very important part of our overall transportation system. It takes, but in Orlando, it has taken a while because, you know, Orlando and Winter Park fundamentally started out as a kind of a linear suburban community that bit by bit began to grow. We are fortunately not Manhattan, we're not a major city, but when you try to bring mass transit into that system, it takes a while for behaviors to change, for people to change their mode of how they work. How do you connect to Sunrail? There's lots of investment that needs to go on. There is in November, we're going to have a transportation penny tax on the ballot for transportation improvements in the area. One of those pieces that it can affect, and especially in Winter Park, is to bring that to transportation issues, which includes Sunrail, but also includes how Lynx connects to it. How are the other ways that we get around? So I think Sunrail is a good start, and we need to continue to invest to make it a workable system.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, your response.
Thank you. I mentioned Sunrail before, and I'll just repeat. Sunrail should be a transit system, not a commuter system. When we start paying for maintenance and operation, we should have more influence on how Sunrail evolves. We need connectors to the airport, as has been mentioned. We need ways to cover the last mile, get people to the stops. And I'm going to throw out something that may not be popular, but I think we should have a parking structure behind the Sunrail station and have more than a kiss and ride stop. With the current Sunrail schedule, I often travel on weekends, come in at night, leave at night, and I can't use Sunrail to go to the airport, even though there is a dedicated link system that goes to the airport from the stop. So every passenger on the Sunrail train is one less car on our roads. So it will help, or at least help somewhat with our traffic issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kriesman, same question to you.
I first thought about Sunrail. When we moved here in 1993, 94, the city, the region was looking at light rail. And we missed an opportunity. Charlotte took that money and has advanced a system that's been beneficial. It does take decades to change pattern and behavior. We're not going to be able to make that move quickly. Unfortunately, we have Sunrail, and as has been stated by others, there's limitations to it. It's kind of chicken and the egg. They need more money to be able to make it so that it could work in the weekends and night when we want it to work. Our parking here, if I want to use it, I have to go out to Maitland to park. But I think the key issue for us in Winter Park is how do we close that last mile? And that's why for myself, I think one of the key things we should be able to do with CRA money, one of the things we should look at is making a long-term investment in our own mini trolley, or like Lake Nona's done, a mini transit system that they're trying out with an autonomous driving vehicle. I would go Morrison and Park, loop around Orange, make a circle. It would be beneficial for our businesses, it would be beneficial for our residents, it would be beneficial for people helping us get, at least locally, some of the vehicles off the roads. That would be helpful in building and supporting Sunrail to get people to be able to move in and out, to come here to shop, to be able to kind of make their way to all of our different areas. And I think if we do that, it helps us become a regional leader. We already are a regional leader, but I think Winter Park needs to step forward even more in sense of regional leadership in these kinds of areas to say to the rest of our neighborly cities, join us and let's creating something special.
Thank you. Ms. DeCiccio, your response.
Thank you. I agree. Sunrail should be expanded. Winter Park, the city has been putting money aside. We've been allocating money. So when it hits next year, we're in good shape to handle that cost. But we need more stops. I agree it shouldn't be just a commuter rail. It needs to be a transit rail. If you're going to use it, if local people are going to use it and we don't want to get in our cars, we need it to stop more places. For example, if it could stop, right now it's on Park Avenue, Morse Boulevard there. If it could park up by 1792 Orange Avenue, it could take a lot of cars off. We wouldn't have to worry about parking. We do need more parking structure because, for example, if you're going to take that Sunrail, if we could expand it to the airport, you want to leave your car. So we will need some parking structure. I mean, you're going to want to leave your car maybe a week if you're going on vacation, or 2 weeks, or whatever that time is. So we need to look at it, the entire city, and we need to move into the 21st century for this because the cars are just choking our roads, and it's frustrating for everybody. And one of the key ways to address this is with Sunrail. And wouldn't it be great even if we could just get it during the art festival to run on the weekends? It would help tremendously. So yes, I'm for the expansion of Sunrail, and I think we can do it in a very efficient, economic way. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. DeCiccio, you will have the first opportunity for the next question. This is related to the Winter Park Library and Event Center. I'm getting the bug, so hold on. This is halftime, isn't it? So we're going to start with a question instead related to ethics and sunshine laws. Ms. DeCiccio, at least one sitting commissioner believes their personal, community-wide advocacy for or against a project prior to the commission review is okay. Others feel it is a violation of Florida's ethics and sunshine laws. What do you believe is proper and right?
I'm going to ask you just to repeat that middle section again. I'm sorry.
No, I'll repeat the whole question for everyone. At least one sitting commissioner believes their personal, community-wide advocacy for or against a project prior to the commission review is okay. Others feel it is a violation of Florida's ethics and sunshine laws. What do you believe is proper and right in this regard?
I think where the question is coming from is if any of us are elected as city commissioner, can we send out emails advocating our position, the position we want to see? Is that a violation of the sunshine laws? I think that is what the question is asking. And this is one issue that I've been grappling with. First of all, with the sunshine laws, the commissioners are not allowed to talk to each other about issues. Everything has to be in the public domain. I think what should be done is, we have a communications department within the city, but I think we need to use that communication department, and every email needs to come from the city. And I think we should have that weekly so that everybody knows what's going on. Give an update. XYZ happened with the library. This is what was discussed. This is when the next meeting's going to be. I also think there needs to be a workshop by the commissioners that's at a specific time every month, so that everybody knows the time. It should be later, not at 3:30, more like 4:30 or 5, so that everybody, people who work, have the opportunity to go.